Hello everyone and welcome to this edition of Vintage NASCAR Owners, Junie Donlavey. Wesley Christian Donlavey Jr., born April 8, 1924, nicknamed Junie. Donlavey is a former NASCAR Cup Series team owner of the team Donlavey Racing, which competed from 1950 through 2004, one of the longest running teams in NASCAR history. This team competed in 863 Cup Series races. 67 different drivers ran at least one race for Donlavey Racing through its existence. He based his team out of his hometown of Richmond, Virginia. Donlavey's team debuted at Martinsville Speedway in 1950 when Runt Harris drove the team's Oldsmobile to a 19th place finish, following mechanical failures. The team's next race would come in 1952 in the Southern 500 held at Darlington Speedway, where Joe Weatherly drove a number 53 Hudson Hornet, starting 38th and finishing 16th. Not too bad of a run for the team, really. It wasn't until 1957 that Donlavey would field another race car, when Emmanuel Servakis drove Donlavey's number 90 Ford at Raleigh Speedway, finishing 24th. Servakis made two more starts for Donlavey in 57 at Langhorne Speedway and Martinsville, where he finished 26th and 22nd. Harris also made another start for Donlavey in the Southern 500 at Darlington, finishing 39th. 1958 didn't go that great for Donlavey's team. Servakis returned to run Donlavey's Chevys, though they didn't finish a race all season. Donlavey only ran one Cup Series race all season long in 1959, the Capital City 200, a hometown race held at Richmond Raceway. Runt Harris would finish a strong 5th place in that event. The 1960s were upon us, and in 1960, Harris would make 3 more starts for Donlavey Racing, though mechanical issues plagued him, only allowing Harris a best finish of 30th. Speedy Thompson took over for 3 races, scoring a best finish of 12th in the Dixie 300 held at Atlanta Motor Speedway. Tiny Lund drove for Donlavey in the next race held at Atlanta Motor Speedway, the Atlanta 500, but finished 36th after suffering an engine failure early in the race. The following season, in 1961, Donlavey fielded a car for Johnny Roberts at Richmond, though they finished 21st after suffering a blown head gasket. The team would not field another car until 1965, when Sonny Hutchins took over the ride. He made 10 starts throughout the season, with his best finishes being 5th at Moyock and 10th at Martinsville. Hutchins returned in 1966, though not able to score any top 10s. Again he returned in 67 and was able to score 2 more top 10s, and even finished 34th in final Cup Series point standings. 1968 saw Hutchins and Donlavey Racing make 4 more starts, all ending in DNFs. Though in 1969, Hutchins made 8 more starts and had 2 second-place finishes at Dover and Richmond. Yet another decade down, the 1970s were upon the sport, and with this decade came much-needed growth and organization. Sonny Hutchins returned to Donlavey Racing in 1970 and even had a 5th-place finish at Richmond, though he was soon out of the Donlavey Racing ride. Leroy Yarborough made 1 start for the team at Trenton Speedway, though his engine expired only a few laps into the event. Bill Dennis finished the 1970 season, and in fact, he went on to win Rookie of the Year honors for 1970. In 1971, Bill Dennis would become Donlavey Racing's first full-time driver, having a decent season, scoring 1 pole and 10 top 10 finishes, finishing 18th in final points. In 1972, R.J. Reynolds came into the sport as the sponsor of the Cup Series, and they shortened the schedule from around 50 races a season down to around 30 races a season, also implementing a point system called the Latford system. It really was a good thing for NASCAR. Dennis began the 1972 season with Donlavey, even scoring a 5th place finish at Richmond early in the season. But he resigned following that race. Jackie Oliver he made 7 starts throughout the 1972 season, with the best finish of 4th at Dover in the spring. Dick Brooks, he made 3 starts, with his best finish of 27th, coming at Michigan in the spring. Jimmy Hensley made 2 starts at both the Martinsville races, with his best finish of 5th, coming in the fall. Fred Lorenzen, he made 1 start at Trenton, finishing 4th. Leroy Yarborough made 2 more starts for the team. His best finish was 5th, coming in Atlanta in the summer. Ramo Stott made 2 starts. His best finish was 2nd at Talladega in the summer. David Pearson made 1 start at Richmond in the fall, finishing 24th. Max Barrier made 1 start at North Wilkesboro in the fall, finishing 18th. Butch Hartman made 1 start at Charlotte in the fall, finishing 5th. Ron Hutcherson also made 1 start at Rockingham in the fall, finishing 40th. And Johnny Rutherford also made 1 start for Donlavey at Texas World Speedway, finishing 26th. Donlavey also fielded a second car for the team for the first time ever, when he fielded a number 98 at Martinsville for Bobby Isaac, who finished 35th. Then he did for Dick Brooks at Talladega in the spring, where he finished 8th. And 1 more time for Richard D. Brown in the following race at Charlotte, where Brown finished 41st. Donlavey Racing secured their first full-time sponsor in 1973 when they signed Truxmore Industries. Though the carousel of drivers kept spinning, Ramo Stott made 2 starts for the team, with the best finish of 8th at Daytona in the spring. Ray Hendrick made 2 starts for the team also, with the best finish of 11th, coming at Martinsville in the fall. Dick Brooks made 7 starts for Donlavey, with the best finish of 5th at Rockingham in the spring. Overall, in his 7 starts, he scored 1 top 5 and 5 top 10s. Yvon Dumal made a one-off start for the team at North Wilkesboro in the spring, finishing 10th. Richie Panch made a one-off start at Darlington in the spring, finishing 17th. Jimmy Hensley returned to the team to make another start for the team at Martinsville in the spring race, where he finished 7th. Eddie Pettyjohn made 2 starts at the 2 Dover races. His best finish was 10th in the fall race. Jody Ridley made 2 starts, with the best finish of 5th at Atlanta in the summer. Fellow team owner Bud Moore even made a start for Donlavey at Darlington in the fall, finishing 29th. Harry Gant made 1 start at Charlotte in the fall, finishing 11th. Charlie Glotzback also made 1 start at Rockingham in the fall, finishing 8th. Donlavey again fielded a second car a couple times, once for Dick Brooks at Darlington in the spring, where he finished 11th, and another time for Richie Panch. The 1974 NASCAR Cup Series season saw Donlavey Racing begin the season with Bill Dennis as the driver. In his 3 starts, his best finish was 7th at Rockingham in the spring. A rotation of drivers helped Donlavey finish the 74 Cup Series season. Richie Panch made 1 start at Bristol in the spring, finishing 27th. Jody Ridley made 2 starts, with his best finish being 30th at Rockingham in the fall. Bobby Isaac made 1 start at Darlington in the spring, finishing 33rd. Harry Gant also made 1 start for Donlavey at North Wilkesboro in the spring, finishing a pretty solid 9th. Yet again, Donlavey brought back Jimmy Hensley to run another Martinsville race for the team, finishing 6th. Then Donlavey would settle on a driver, Charlie Glotzback, who would end up making all but 1 of the remaining starts for the team throughout the 1974 season. Glotzback's best finish was 4th 3 times, at Talladega in the spring, Bristol in the summer, and Richmond in the fall. Overall, in 11 starts, he would score 3 top 5s and 4 top 10s. Eddie Pettyjohn returned to the team to run both Dover races again, with the best finish of 24th coming in the fall. Paul Radford made 1 start at Martinsville in the fall, finishing 30th, and George Fulmer also made 1 start at Ontario in the fall, finishing 32nd. After years and years of having rotations of drivers behind the wheel of his race cars, in 1975, Junie Donlavey decided to go full-time with just 1 driver. Dick Brooks was behind the wheel of the number 90 Truxmore Industries Ford. His best start was 3rd at North Wilkesboro in the fall, and his best finish was 2nd at Dover in this fall. Really, the team did not have a bad season at all, scoring 6 top 5s and 15 top 10s, finishing 10th in final NASCAR Cup Series point standings. Donlavey Racing also fielded a second car in select races, a number 93 Ford, for drivers such as Kenny Brightville, Dick May, Earl Ross, and Jody Ridley. Dick Brooks returned to the number 90 Truxmore Industries Ford to run full-time once again in 1976. His best start was third at Darlington in the spring, and his best finish was third at Talladega in the summer. This was another solid season for Donlavey Racing, scoring 3 top 5s and 18 top 10s, finishing 10th once again in final Cup Series point standings. Again, the team would field a second car a few times, a number 93 Ford, once for Buck Baker and once for Gene Felton. Then they would field a number 99 Ford for Dick Trickle at Charlotte, as well as entering a number 90 Ford Torino in the 1976 24 Hours of Le Mans, with drivers Dick Brooks, Dick Hutcherson, and French driver Marcel Mignot. Though, unfortunately, they DNF'd 11 hours into the event due to transmission failure. In 1977, Brooks returned once again to the Cup Series with Donlavey Racing and their number 90 Ford team. This was definitely the team's best season in their history thus far, spending 21 weeks inside the top 10 in point standings. Brooks' best start was 4th at Richmond in the fall, and his best finish was 2nd at Bristol in the spring. Overall, they scored 7 top 5s and 20 top 10s, finishing 6th in final Cup Series point standings. Donlavey also fielded a second car, a number 93, for Belgian racer Christine Beckers, where she finished 37th. For the 1978 NASCAR Cup Series season, Dick Brooks would return for what would end up being his final full-time season with the team. His best start was 4th at Darlington in the spring, and his best finish was 4th at Bristol in the summer. This was yet another strong season for Donlavey Racing, spending 3 weeks inside the top 5 and 24 weeks inside the top 10 in Cup Series point standings throughout the season. Overall, they scored 5 top 5s and 17 top 10s, finishing 8th in final Cup Series point standings. After having the same driver behind the wheel of their Donlavey Racing team race cars, in 1979, the team got a new driver. A young Ricky Rudd became the team's new driver of their number 90 Truxmore Fords and Mercuries. Rudd's best start was 4th at Darlington in the spring, and his best finish was 3rd twice at Talladega in the summer and Richmond in the fall. Now, Rudd was still at the beginning of his career, so he wasn't the well-experienced driver we all know him as, though he improved greatly as the season went on. Overall, they scored 4 top 5s and 17 top 10s, finishing 9th in final Cup Series point standings. Again, Donlavey Racing, like it had done periodically over the years, entered a second car, a number 77 Sunny King Mercury, with Jody Ridley behind the wheel. They only fielded the car for 3 races, and Ridley finished inside the top 10 2 of those times. Even though the team and Rudd had a solid 1979 season, Rudd left the team nonetheless at the conclusion of the season. So as the calendar switched to 1980, the team switched their driver to Jody Ridley. So Ridley was behind the wheel of the number 90 Truxmore, Sunny King, Fords, and Mercuries full-time for the 1980 Cup Series season. His best start was 6th at Michigan in the fall, and his best finish was 5th twice at Richmond and Rockingham in the fall. This was a very solid season for Donlavey Racing, spending all but 2 weeks inside the top 10 in point standings, as well as Jody Ridley winning Rookie of the Year honors in the Cup Series for 1980. Overall, they scored 2 top 5s and 18 top 10s, finishing 7th in final Cup Series point standings. The following season, in 1981, Jody Ridley would return to the number 90 Truxmore Sunny King Ford full-time. This season would end up being Donlavey Racing's strongest season that the team would ever have. They spent 11 weeks inside the top 5 and 31 weeks inside the top 10 in NASCAR Cup Series point standings. Ridley's best start was 4th at Bristol in the fall, and his best finish was 1st at Dover in the spring. This was Donlavey Racing's first and would end up being their only NASCAR Cup Series victory throughout the team's over 50-year existence. Overall, they scored 1 win, 3 top 5s, and 18 top 10s, finishing 5th in final Cup Series point standings. J.D. Stacy became Donlavey Racing's new primary sponsor for the 1982 NASCAR Cup Series season. Jody Ridley returned for what ended up being his final season behind the wheel of the number 90 Ford. Ridley's best start was 7th at Rockingham in the spring, and his best finish was 6th at Charlotte in the spring. Really, performance was down all the way across the board in 1982. No top 5s, 12 DNFs, and only spending 2 weeks inside the top 10 in Cup Series point standings throughout the season. Overall, they scored 10 top 10s and finished 13th in final Cup Series point standings, At the conclusion of the season, Ridley left the team. A familiar face returned to Donlavey Racing to drive the number 90 Chameleon Sunglasses Ford for the 1983 NASCAR Cup Series season. Dick Brooks. For real, Brooks and the team got off to an awesome start in 1983, spending the first 5 races of the season inside the top 5 in point standings, even for the first and only time ever leading the Cup Series point standings following the 4th race of the season in Atlanta. Though, from that point on, the team dropped little by little each week in point standings, until they weren't even inside the top 10 anymore, again racking up 12 DNFs throughout the season, for the 2nd season in a row. Overall, they scored 2 top 5s and 6 top 10s, finishing 14th in final Cup Series point standings. The next season, in 1984, Dick Brooks returned to the Donlavey Racing number 90 Chameleon Sunglasses Ford team full-time for his final season with the team. Really, the 1984 season wasn't that much to write home about. They set between 19th to 15th in point standings throughout the season, and again had double-digit DNFs. Brooks' best start was 7th twice, at Richmond and Rockingham in the spring, and his best finish was 3rd at Bristol in the fall. Overall, they scored 1 top 5 and 5 top 10s, finishing 15th in final Cup Series point standings. With Brooks leaving at the end of the 1984 season, for the 1985 NASCAR Cup Series season, Donlavey Racing signed rookie Ken Schrader to drive the team's number 90 Ultra Seal Ford full-time. Schrader's best start was 10th at Charlotte in the fall, and his best finish was 10th 3 times at Bristol and Dover and Riverside in the spring. The team had significantly fewer DNFs, only 7 as opposed to double-digit numbers the previous 2 seasons. Overall scoring 3 top 10s and finishing 16th in final Cup Series point standings, not to mention the fact that Schrader won Rookie of the Year honors in the Cup Series. Red Baron Frozen Pizza came aboard as the team's new primary sponsor of the number 90 Ford for 1986. Ken Schrader returned to the team for his sophomore season in the Cup Series, and there was some improvement. Schrader's best start was 8th at Rockingham in the spring, and his best finish was 7th twice at both Martinsville races. They had 2 more DNFs, even though their finishes were a bit better. They ended up about the same points-wise. Overall, they scored 4 top 10s and finished 16th in final Cup Series point standings. After always serving as the team's crew chief, in 1987, Donlavey hired Bob Johnson to serve as the team's crew chief. Ken Schrader returned for his 3rd and final season behind the wheel of the number 90 Red Baron Frozen Pizza Ford. Performance was up, DNFs were down, and the team spent almost the entire season inside the top 10 in Cup Series point standings. Schrader's best start was 1st at Darlington in the spring, and his best finish was 5th, also at Darlington in the spring. Overall, they scored 1 pole, 0 wins, 1 top 5, and 10 top 10s, finishing 10th in final Cup Series point standings. No one knew it then, but this would be the final season that Donlavey Racing would both score double-digit top 10 finishes in a single season, and it would be the final time the team would ever finish inside the top 10 in Cup Series point standings. See, NASCAR was going through a transformation period when smaller single-car teams started to really fall out of favor, if you will. 1988 saw Donlavey Racing sign 1973 NASCAR Cup Series champion Benny Parsons, fresh off his run with Hendrick Motorsports. Parsons was behind the wheel of the number 90 Bullseye Barbecue Ford full-time. Doug Reichert served as the team's crew chief for the 1988 season. Parsons' best start was 8th twice, in Atlanta and Michigan in the spring. His best finish was 8th at Phoenix in the fall. In 27 starts, he scored 1 top 10 and racked up 9 DNFs, finishing 24th in final Cup Series point standings. Jimmy Means stepped in for Parsons at North Wilkesboro in the fall, finishing 24th. At the conclusion of the season, Parsons and Donlavey parted ways. For the 1989 NASCAR Cup Series season, Donlavey began the season with rookie Chad Little behind the wheel of his number 90 Ford. Though after 8 starts in total, Little was released, his best finish coming in the Coca-Cola 600 at Charlotte in the spring, 18th. Stan Barrett made 4 starts in the number 90 Ford, with a best finish of 26th at Watkins Glen in the summer. Lenny Pond made 1 start at Richmond in the fall, finishing 11th. At the advice of Ken Schrader, Donlavey signed Ernie Irvin to drive the team's number 90 Ford for the 1990 NASCAR Cup Series season. Though after only 3 races, Irvin asked if he could look for other, more funded opportunities elsewhere, and pretty much left the team immediately. In 3 starts, his best finish was 13th at Daytona in the spring. Buddy Baker spent the vast majority of the remainder of the 1990 Cup Series season making select starts for the team. Baker made 8 starts in all, with the best finish of 15th at Charlotte in the spring. Lenny Pond returned to the team to make another one-off start at Richmond in the fall, finishing 22nd. Donlavey fielded a second car at Rockingham in the spring, a number 91 Ford for J.T. Hayes, finishing 41st. Robbie Gordon was Donlavey's latest driver that would start the season only to not work out only a couple races into the season. His best finish was 18th at Daytona. Wally Dallenbach Jr. would spend the remainder of the 1991 Cup Series season making select starts in Donlavey's number 90 Ford. At 11 starts, Dallenbach's best finish was 19th at Charlotte in the fall. The 1992 NASCAR Cup Series season saw a rotation of drivers behind the wheel of Donlavey's number 90 Ford. Dorsey Schrader made 1 start at Daytona in the spring, finishing 19th. Charlie Glotzbach made 7 starts. His best finish was 16th at Michigan in the spring. Kerry Teague made 1 start at Darlington in the spring, finishing 38th. Hut Stricklin made 4 starts with a best finish of 15th at Dover in the fall. Poncho Carter made 1 start at Charlotte in the fall, finishing 32nd. Bobby Hillin Jr. also made 1 start for the team in Atlanta in the fall, finishing 30th. For the first time in several seasons, in 1993, Donlavey Racing had a solid sponsor and the same driver for an entire season. Bobby Hillin Jr. was the new driver of the number 90 Heiligmeyer Ford. Doug Williams served as the team's crew chief for the 1993 season. Hillin's best start was 9th at Daytona in the spring, and his best finish was 11th at Michigan in the summer. The team just did not have much speed, and it showed in both results and point standings. They ended the 1993 Cup Series season 27th in final points. Hillin started the 1994 season with Donlavey Racing, but after only 3 starts, he left the team. In said 3 starts, his best finish was 24th at Daytona in the spring. Freddie Fryer served as the team's crew chief for the 1994 season. Mike Wallace took over the number 90 Heiligmeyer Ford. In 22 Cup Series attempts throughout the remainder of the 1994 season, Wallace's best start was 13th at Charlotte in the fall, and his best finish was 5th at Atlanta in the fall. Though he did D&Q 6 times, they scored 1 top 5 and 1 top 10, finishing 33rd in final Cup Series point standings. In 1995, Mike Wallace returned to the Donlavey Racing number 90 Heiligmeyer Ford full-time. Again, Wallace struggled to qualify for races and really just didn't improve over the season prior. His best start was 10th at Sonoma in the spring, and his best finish was 8th at Bristol in the fall. Overall, they scored 1 top 10 and finished 34th in final point standings. Wallace would make the first 12 attempts of the 1996 NASCAR Cup Series season for Donlavey Racing. His best finish was 17th at Rockingham in the spring. Bob Johnson became the team's crew chief again for the 1996 Cup Series season. Dick Trickle became the team's new driver, and he ran the remainder of the 96 Cup Series season, 17 starts in all. Trickle's best start was 4th at Michigan in the fall. His best finish was 13th at Martinsville in the fall. The next season, in 1997, Dick Trickle returned to the number 90 Heiligmeyer Ford full-time. Bob Johnson began the season as the team's crew chief, but at some point following race 4 in Atlanta, Tommy Baldwin Jr. replaced Johnson. Trickle's best start was 4th 3 times, in Atlanta in the spring, then Bristol and Dover in the fall. His best finish was 3rd at Bristol in the fall. This season was definitely an improvement over the previous several seasons, overall scoring 2 top 5s and 2 top 10s, finishing 31st in final Cup Series point standings. For the 1998 NASCAR Cup Series season, Dick Trickle would return for his final season behind the wheel of Donlavey Racing's number 90 Heiligmeyer Ford. Tommy Baldwin Jr. served as the team's crew chief for the first 24 starts of the season, followed by Mike Hillman for 3 races, and Junie Donlavey himself for the final 4 races of the season. Trickle's best start was 3rd, and his best finish was 6th, both coming at Atlanta in the spring. Overall, they scored 1 top 10 and finished 29th in final Cup Series point standings. Both Heiligmeyer and Dick Trickle left Donlavey Racing at the conclusion of the season. During the season, Junie missed attending his first race in years due to having to undergo heart surgery. After losing some personnel following the '98 season, Donlavey had originally announced that he would be fielding a number 90 Big Daddy's barbecue sauce Ford for rookie Mike Harmon for the 1999 Nascar Cup Series season. Prior to the Daytona 500, the news broke that Big Daddy's had not been paying its sponsorship checks on time. Therefore, Donlavey took the decals off of his number 90 Ford and fired Mike Harmon. Harmon was replaced by Mike Wallace, with AccuTurn and Kodiak serving as the team sponsor for the Daytona 500. Wallace made a one-off start at Daytona in the spring, finishing 23rd. Morgan Shepherd made one start at Rockingham in the spring, finishing 32nd. Stanton Barrett made 9 attempts, only qualifying twice, with a best finish of 30th in Las Vegas in the spring. Ed Barrier made 7 attempts, qualifying 4 times, with a best finish of 25th in Atlanta in the fall. Hut Stricklin made 6 attempts, qualifying once at Charlotte in the spring, finishing 33rd. The turn of the century, year 2000, and for Donlavey Racing owner Junie Donlavey, he thought that he may have something set up going into the 2000 Cup Series season. The team signed Hills Brothers Coffee to sponsor their number 90 Fords, and he signed Ed Barrier to compete for Cup Series Rookie of the Year honors. Barrier made 18 attempts, qualifying for 10 of them. His best finish was 26th at Daytona in the summer. Brian Semo was brought in to run the 2 road course races, only qualifying for Sonoma, finishing 36th. With Barrier struggling, he was released mid-season. Hus Stricklin was brought in to replace Barrier, making 14 attempts, only qualifying 7 times. His best finish was 14th at Indianapolis in the summer. That following season, in 2001, Hus Stricklin returned to Donlavey Racing's number 90 Hills Brothers Coffee Ford full-time. Well, for what was supposed to be full-time, though after 29 attempts, Hut would part ways with Donlavey Racing. Sarah Lee, Hills Brothers Coffee's parent company, asked Donlavey to move his race team from Richmond to Charlotte, where most all the other NASCAR teams were located. When Donlavey refused, Sarah Lee pulled their sponsorship and gave it to Bill Davis Racing, and Stricklin simply followed the sponsor. Stricklin was doing the best he could with the equipment he was given, only DNQing 8 times in 29 attempts, even having the team's final top 10 run, a 6th place finish at Michigan in the spring. Rick Mast would attempt the final 5 races of 2001 in the team's number 90 Ford, qualifying 3 times, with a best finish of 25th at Phoenix. In 2002, Rick Mast began the season as a full-time driver of Donlavey's number 90 Duke's Mayonnaise Ford. Mast made 11 attempts, qualifying 9 times, with a best finish of 24th at Darlington in the spring. When Mast began feeling anemic, he set out for a few races, while Hermie Sadler made 3 attempts, qualifying twice, with a best finish of 29th twice, at Charlotte and Pocono in the spring. Gary Bradbury also made 1 start at Michigan, finishing 43rd. Mast got diagnosed with carbon monoxide poisoning, and was forced to retire. That's when Duke's Mayonnaise pulled their sponsorship, and that's also when Donlavey cut back his racing schedule and planned to retire, only fielding cars a few more times over the next couple seasons. Lance Hooper drove a number 90 Lucas Oil Ford at Bristol, finishing 35th, and Donlavey Racing team manager Jason Hedleski ran the fall race at Charlotte, starting 41st and finishing 43rd. In 2003, the team attempted the Daytona 500 with Kirk Shelmerdine behind the wheel, but DNQ'd. Hedleski drove the number 90 Ford in the Winston Open, but Donlavey did not field an entry for the rest of the season. In 2004, Andy Hillenberg attempted the Daytona 500, but DNQ'd. A.J. Hendrickson attempted the Pocono race in the summer, though he also DNQ'd. So after 54 seasons of being in operation, Donlavey Racing shut its doors for good in 2004. So in 863 NASCAR Cup Series starts, they scored 2 poles, 1 win, 60 top 5s, and 218 top 10 finishes, with the best points finish of 5th by Jody Ridley in 1981. Thanks for watching, everyone, and take care.